The dog had already drawn blood twice that week, and nobody on base wanted to go near him anymore. That was the situation Commander Brett Aldwin inherited when he took over Camp Pendleton's K9 Special Operations Unit in early March. A 90-pound Belgian Malinois named Rook, black-muzzled, amber-eyed, decorated twice for combat service in Kandahar, had been sitting in an isolation kennel for 6 weeks since his handler, Staff Sergeant Leo Price, was killed by an IED outside Helmand Province. In those 6 weeks, Rook had bitten one trainer badly enough to require stitches, sent another to the infirmary with a crushed finger, and on his worst day thrown himself against the kennel gate so violently that he'd split his own lip open and didn't seem to care. The base veterinarian, a quiet man named Dr. Harlan Foss, had submitted the paperwork 3 times. Each time, the unit CO had sat on it. Rook was a war dog, decorated. Operational. You didn't put down an asset like that over grief. But Aldwin was running out of options, and everyone on base seemed to agree. Rook was gone. Whatever made him the dog he'd been in Kandahar, that coiled, brilliant, terrifying focus, it had died somewhere on the road outside Helmand with Leo Price. What was left in that kennel wasn't a weapon. It was a wound. That was the word they kept using. A wound. That was the word Nessa Culver heard when she pulled into the base parking lot on a Tuesday morning in a second-hand Ford Ranger with a cracked passenger mirror and a cardboard coffee cup balanced on the dash. She sat in the truck for a moment before getting out. She looked at the facility through the windshield, the long cinder-block buildings, the training yards with their chain-link fencing and obstacle courses, the distant sound of a dog barking somewhere deep inside, and she exhaled slowly. Then she picked up her clipboard, got out, and walked toward the entrance. She was 28 years old. She wore no rank insignia, no uniform, just dark cargo pants, a grey long-sleeve shirt with a small company logo on the chest, and a pair of worn leather work gloves tucked into her back pocket. She looked like someone who had gotten lost on the way to a construction site. The MP at the gate checked her credentials twice. "Behavioral contractor," he said, reading off his screen. "From Blackwatch K9 Services, that's right." He looked at her, then back at the screen. "You're here about the Malinois." "I am." He handed back her ID and waved her through without another word, but she felt his eyes on her back as she walked. Commander Brett Aldwin was a large man who filled a room the way furniture does, not aggressively, just completely. He had the kind of face that had never been young, even when it was, and the kind of posture that came from 22 years of never being told to sit down. He was standing at the window of his office when Nessa knocked on the open door, looking out at the yard where 3 handlers were running a German shepherd through a detection drill. He turned around and looked at her. The silence lasted about 4 seconds longer than it needed to. "You're Culver," he said. "Yes, sir." He didn't tell her to sit. He crossed his arms. "How old are you?" 28. "How long have you been doing this?" "Working dog since I was 16. Formally contracted since I was 23. He made a sound in the back of his throat that wasn't quite skepticism and wasn't quite acceptance. "Your company sent me a file. Said you've worked with trauma-reactive working dogs, Malinois, specifically." "Yes, sir." "Rook isn't reactive," Aldwin said. "Reactive suggests he can be brought back. What Rook is doing is," he paused, looking for the word, "deliberate. He's not acting out. He's deciding to attack. There's a difference." Nessa kept her expression level. "I understand. 2 of my best handlers have been injured trying to run an evaluation on him. My vet wants to euthanize. I've been holding that order for 6 weeks because Rook has a service record that would embarrass most of the men in this unit." He looked at her steadily. "I don't know what you're going to be able to do that they couldn't," she said. "I'd like to observe him first. Then we can talk about what I can do." Aldwin studied her for another long moment. Then he uncrossed his arms and picked up his radio. The kennel block was loud in a way that pressed against the ears, the overlap of barking, paws on concrete, the industrial hum of ventilation fans. A master sergeant named Cliff Taggart walked Nessa down the row, his keys jangling against his hip. He had the energy of a man who had decided before she arrived that this visit was a waste of time, and he wasn't hiding it particularly well. "He's at the end," Taggart said. "We don't run him with the others anymore. Too disruptive. How is his appetite?" "Inconsistent. Eats sometimes, ignores the bowl other times. Losses weight, then levels out. Vet says he's not in physical distress." A pause. Whatever that means for a dog that looks like he does. Nessa didn't respond to that. She just kept walking. Rook's kennel was separated from the others by an empty unit on each side. A hand-lettered sign on the gate said "Caution, do not enter alone." The plexiglass viewing panel on the gate had a single spiderweb crack across the lower left corner. She stopped in front of it. Rook was in the back corner of the kennel, lying down with his head on his paws. He was bigger than she'd expected. She'd seen his records, but records were numbers, and Rook in person was all muscle and bone and barely contained coil, even lying still. His eyes tracked to her the moment she appeared. He didn't get up. She stood there for a long time. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Taggart shifted his weight behind her. "He'll come at the gate if you get closer." She took 1 step closer. Rook raised his head, the amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that had nothing to do with aggression and everything to do with assessment. He was reading her the same way she was reading him. She looked at the way he held his front left paw slightly off the ground even at rest. She looked at the way his ears moved, back, then sideways, then forward again, running through something. She looked at the scrape along the inside of his left flank where he'd thrown himself against the concrete wall, almost healed now but visible. She stepped back, turned to Taggart. "Has anyone asked his vet about his left front paw?" Taggart blinked. "What? He's favoring it, even lying down. Has Dr. Foss done a full physical since? He's had regular checks. That's not what I asked." Taggart looked at her for a moment with the expression of a man whose morning was going worse than expected. "I'll have to check the records. Please do." She looked back at Rook, who had tracked the entire exchange with the same unreadable focus. "I'd also like to know his command language." "German, standard Schutzhund commands." "And his handler, Sergeant Price. Did he use the standard set, or did he have any personal variations?" The question landed differently than she'd expected it to. Taggart went quiet, and something shifted in his face. "Leo had a few of his own," he said after a moment. The word Leo came out with the particular weight of someone who didn't use it often anymore. Some he picked up from the training center. Some he made up. There was a... He stopped. Started again. There was a release word he used. Personal. "Not in the manual. Do you know it?" Taggart looked at the gate. At Rook, who was watching them. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know it. Write it down for me." She spent 2 hours in the kennel block that first day. She didn't go inside Rook's kennel. She sat on a folding chair outside the gate and read through the files she'd brought. His training records, his deployment history, his behavioral logs from the last 6 weeks. She read them slowly, and she didn't look at Rook constantly, just occasionally, the way you'd glance at someone across a room. Non-threatening. She heard him get up. Present. When she back before 7 to look. The next morning, she was back before Zizzo 700. Taggart found her already there when he arrived, coffee in hand, sitting in the same folding chair. Rook was standing at the front of the kennel watching her. "He hasn't done that," Taggart said. "Done what?" "Stood up near the gate." "Voluntarily." He looked at the dog, then at her. Since Leo. She didn't say anything. She set down her coffee and opened the behavioral log she'd started the night before. At 0900, 3 of the unit's operators came through the kennel block on a walkthrough. A routine rotation. They were large men with the particular economy of movement that came from years of operating in environments where extra motion got people killed. They stopped when they saw Nessa in her folding chair, and then they looked at each other with the specific language of people who have worked together long enough not to need words. The tallest one, Later she'd learn his name was Warrant Officer Dex, Shaughnessy, crouched down to her level with the exaggerated condescension of a man who had decided to be patient with someone who didn't deserve it. "You the dog whisperer they brought in?" he said. "I'm a behavioral consultant." "Yes." "From where?" "Blackwatch K9. Never heard of them." "That's all right," Nessa said, and went back to her log. Shaughnessy didn't stand up. He looked at Rook, who was watching the group with the particular stillness of a dog deciding something. "He bite you yet?" "No, give it time." He stood up. "We've had 2 trainers go to the infirmary on that dog. Man from Fort Bragg with 15 years of working dog experience. Woman from the San Diego unit who trained 3 of the best K9s this facility's ever run. Both of them." He looked at her. "No offense." "Nah, taken," Nessa said. He waited for more. She didn't give him any. The 3 of them moved on through the kennel block, and she heard one of them say something quiet, and then a short laugh, and then the door at the far end banged shut. Rook, she noticed, had not moved from the front of his kennel the entire time. She submitted her preliminary assessment to Commander Aldwin at 1400. It was 6 pages long. The last page was not what he expected. He read it twice, then called her into his office. "You think the problem is physical," he said. "I think the problem is grief," she said, "but the physical component is making it worse. His left front paw shows signs of what I believe is an untreated soft tissue injury, possibly from the deployment, possibly from post-deployment kenneling. He's been in pain for weeks and no one has identified it because his behavior has dominated every evaluation. When a dog is in chronic pain and also grieving and also being approached by strangers who read as threats, you get what we've been calling aggression." She paused. "It's not aggression, it's an animal at the end of his rope." Aldwin looked at her. "Dr. Foss. Dr. Foss has been evaluating his behavior, not his body. I'd like a full orthopedic workup, specifically the left front paw and carpus." She set a single page at the desk. "I also want to try something with him this afternoon, with your permission." He looked at the page. On it, she'd written 1 word. He looked up at her. "Where did you get that?" "Sergeant Taggart." Aldwin sat back in his chair. The light through the window behind him shifted as a cloud crossed outside. "That was Leo's word," he said. "I know. Leo made it up. He told me once. It was something his father used to say. Some kind of private joke between them. He started using it with Rook from day 1. He stopped. Nobody else knows that word. I mean, Taggart knew because he was there for part of the training, but Rook has never responded to anyone else saying it. We've tried. After one of the trainers said it through the gate, and Rook went for the fence. Nessa said, "I think the trainer said it wrong." The silence stretched. "It's not just the word, it's the tone, the rhythm, the way Leo would have said it. Rook doesn't recognize the word in isolation. He recognizes the word as part of a pattern. Vocal pitch, proximity, body language. The trainer said the word, and nothing else matched, so it read as wrong, as something being taken." Aldwin was quiet for a long moment. "You're telling me you know how Leo said it?" "I'm telling you I've studied Rook's behavioral responses for 2 days across multiple interaction types, and I have a strong read on what he responds to." She held his gaze. "I'd like the chance to test it." He looked at her. He looked at the word on the page. "If that dog goes for you," he said slowly, "we're not going to be able to do much in the seconds it takes him to. I know. If he gets to you before anyone can. I know," she said again. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he picked up his radio. She'd asked for no crowd. She got a partial one anyway. Shaughnessy and 2 others were standing outside the kennel run when she arrived, arms crossed, wearing the expressions of men who had been told they were observing but had decided they were supervising. Taggart was there too, standing slightly apart from them, his keys in his hand and his face unreadable. Commander Aldwin stood near the door. Nessa set down her bag. She put on her gloves, then took them off again and set them on top of the bag. She'd need her hands open. "You're not going to wear the bite sleeve," Shaughnessy said. "No." He looked at the others. "You're not going to wear the bite sleeve," he repeated, as though she hadn't understood the question. "I heard you," she said. "Lady," he stepped forward slightly, "that dog took a chunk out of a man twice your size, wearing full bite gear. You understand that?" She looked at him. "I understand that every person who's approached Rook in the last 6 weeks has come in wearing bite gear and carrying a catchpole and radiating the particular energy of someone who expects to be attacked." She kept her voice level and without edge. "I'm going to go in without any of that. If I'm right, he won't need a reason not to attack me. If I'm wrong, I'll deal with the consequences and you'll—" Shaughnessy stopped. He looked at Aldwin. Aldwin said nothing. "This is how people get killed," Shaughnessy said. "He's not going to kill me," Nessa said and picked up her folder. The quiet after that had a particular texture. She walked to Rook's gate. He was in the back corner when she approached, lying down again. But his eyes had found her before she reached the gate, and she could see the tension move through his body the way weather moves through grass. A small shift in the haunches, a slight raise of the head, the flicker of something behind those amber eyes that was not yet a decision but was close to one. She didn't reach for the gate latch immediately. She stood at the gate and let him see her, fully, unhurried. He stood up. The men behind her went very still. Rook walked to the center of the kennel and stopped. He was magnificent in a way that had nothing to do with beauty. He was all operational precision, 90 pounds of engineered instinct, and every line of him said, "I know what I am. Do you know what you are?" Nessa opened the gate. She heard someone behind her say something sharp. A single syllable, cut off when another person grabbed their arm. She stepped inside and latched the gate behind her. Rook did not move. She didn't move toward him. She stood just inside the gate, slightly angled, not presenting her back, not presenting a direct frontal challenge. A position that said, "I'm here. I'm not afraid. I'm not hunting you." His nostrils worked. He was reading her. She let him. 10 seconds, 15. She could hear Shaughnessy breathing behind her through the fence. Then she said the word. Not loud, not commanding. The way you say something to someone in a quiet room that you've said 1,000 times before, until it becomes less a word and more a sound that means you're safe. "I'm here. Everything is exactly what it should be." She said it the way a man named Leo Price had said it in a training yard somewhere in a different facility 3 years ago, when this dog was 11 weeks old and the world was still new and full of the smell of leather and grass and the particular quality of a voice that meant home. The effect was not dramatic. That was most astonishing thing about it. How undramatic it was. Rook simply sat down. He sat down, and his head dropped slightly, and something in the angle of his ears changed from alert to something else. Something that didn't have a tactical name. He looked at her with those amber eyes, and his tail that had not moved voluntarily in 6 weeks, according to every behavioral log, moved once. A single slow sweep, and then again. She crossed to him slowly. She crouched to his level. She held out the back of her hand, and he pressed his muzzle against it with a force that was not aggression. It was the pressing of an animal trying to confirm something it can barely believe. Behind her, through the chain-link gate, nobody said a word. Dr. Foss's orthopedic evaluation confirmed what Nessa had suspected, a hairline fracture of the accessory carpal bone, partially healed, but improperly, causing chronic low-grade pain that had gone undiagnosed because the behavioral profile had consumed every evaluation. The injury had likely occurred during a hard landing on a concrete surface, Sotheby's. Possibly during transport, possibly during the Hellmand deployment itself. 6 weeks of kennel stress on an improperly healed bone. He'd been hurting, and nobody had looked for why. When Taggart got the report, he sat down in his chair and put his hands flat on the desk and stared at the wall for a while. She ran into Shaughnessy near the water station at the edge of the training yard on a Thursday afternoon, 3 days into Rook's treatment protocol. He was sitting on a low wall, running a cloth over a piece of equipment, and he looked up when she passed. She kept walking. "Hey," he said. She stopped. He was quiet for a moment, turning the equipment over in his hands without looking at it. The afternoon light came flat and bright across the yard, and somewhere inside the facility, a dog was barking in the high, repetitive way that meant a training drill was running. "The poor thing," he said finally. "How'd you see that?" She looked at him. "I looked for it." He set down the equipment, didn't say anything. "Every person who went in to evaluate him was looking for what he'd do," she said. "I was looking for what? Hurt once." Small nod. It was a small nod, and it cost him something, and she could see both of those things clearly. "He's always said that. Leo always said that." Said Rook was the kind of dog that made you want to be a better handler. She said, "I know." He looked at her. "You said that like you knew Leo." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she said, "I didn't, but I've been reading his notes for 3 days. A pause. "He wrote about Rook the way people write about." She stopped. "Yeah," Shaughnessy said. "He did." She left him there, and she didn't look back. And inside the facility, Rook was probably lying on the therapeutic mat Dr. Foss had ordered for his kennel, his paw wrapped, his food bowl empty because he'd finished it for the first time in 6 weeks. The formal evaluation after Nessa arrived. Commander Aldwin attended. 3 additional officers attended. Taggart was there. Shaughnessy was there, standing in the back with his arms crossed but with a different quality to it than the first time. Less fortification, more something he was doing with his hands. Nessa ran Rook through a full operational protocol. Detection, apprehension, recall, directed search, off-lead healing. She used German commands for most of it. For the recall, she used Leo's word. Rook performed with the precision of an animal who had never been broken, because he hadn't been. He'd been in pain, and he'd been grieving, and those were 2 different things than broken, and the men watching from the fence line had only known how to see the one. When she brought Rook to heel, and he sat clean at her left side, she heard someone behind her say, quietly, something that sounded like God. She didn't smile, but she felt the thing in her chest that came when a piece fell into place, that quiet, particular satisfaction that never quite felt like pride, but was something adjacent to it. Aldwin caught her as she was loading her truck in the parking lot. He walked out without his hat, which she'd come to understand was unusual for him, and he put his hands in his pockets and stood there in the afternoon sun, looking like a man who had lost an argument he hadn't known he was having. "Dr. Foss says Rook will be fully operational in 6 weeks, he said. 8 if we're careful. 6 if you do the PT correctly, she said. 8 if you rush it. He nodded. We'll do it correctly. A pause. Taggart is volunteering to primary handle. She looked up from her tailgate. Taggart is good. He knew Leo. Rook has history with him. Not enough to help before. He didn't know what to offer before. He does now. Aldwin absorbed this. He looked at the facility behind him, then back at her. Blackwatch, how long are you contracted to us? The contract was for assessment and initial intervention. 30 days. And after, she closed the tailgate, looked at him. I have other dogs, Commander, he said. We'd like to put in a request for extended consultation. Rook specifically, but also, he paused. We have 3 other dogs I'd like you to look at, not for the same issue, but your methodology. He stopped, as though choosing a word and discarding it. The way you approach an animal that everyone else has written off. She picked up her bag. Send the request to Blackwatch, they'll get it to me. She walked to the driver's side, had her hand on the door. Culver! She turned. Aldwin was standing in the parking lot with his hands in his pockets, looking at her with the expression of a man paying a debt he doesn't fully understand the terms of yet. That word, he said, Leo's word. The way you said it. He stopped, started again. Nobody was going to figure that out. Nobody was even looking at that. She said, someone should have been. He nodded, not in agreement exactly, more in the way that people nod when they're filing something away permanently. She got in the truck. 3 weeks later, a video circulated in the unit. Someone had recorded it informally, just a phone, held up at the training yard fence on a bright morning. It showed Taggart running Rook through a detection course, clean and fast, Rook's nose working the rows of crates with the focused intensity of an animal entirely in his element. At the end of the course, Rook came to heel. His tail was up. His eyes were bright. In the comments, because these things always ended up with comments, someone who'd been there the day of the evaluation wrote, "That dog was never gone. He was just waiting for somebody to actually look at him." And somewhere in a second-hand Ford Ranger with a cracked passenger mirror, driving 2 hours north toward the next facility and the next dog, and whatever that dog needed, Nessa Culver's phone buzzed with the notification, and she glanced at it at a red light, and then the light turned green and she drove on.